Well, let's welcome back to JBoss Podcast. Today we're joined by Paddy Galloway, the YouTube analyst who's worked with MrBeast and some of the biggest content creators in the app. Today I interview him and just talk about like basically everything that he does in his day-to-day life. Kind of insightful if you're into content creation, kind of be a good one. So yeah, let's get straight into it.
If there was a young lad and he was finishing school and he was 18 and he had 2 or 3 million views a month and 60,000 subscribers, you'd say to him, do it, like, give it a go, you know? Whereas like when I was leaving college, like, or leaving school, it wasn't even a question. Like I never even considered it. I didn't even consider it. And
how old are you? Like 25? I want to say 24, 25?
26.
Oh, see? Not bad. Not a bad prediction there.
Not bad. I'm a granddad in this YouTube space though. I work with some of the clients I work with. I got this guy in America I work with called Jesser. He does like NBA videos. And he's got this massive team. He's running a whole team of like 20, I want to say like 20, 30 people. And I was just like, I wonder how old this kid is. And I look him up, he's like 22, 23. And I'm like, imagine being 20, 22, 23 and having like 25 people working for you.
Yeah.
Must be a madness.
I've always been very curious though why you never like obviously you do your own channel and stuff, but I've been curious like why you don't like try and, because obviously you coach like MrBeast and stuff, you've had consultations with him. Why don't you try and be like the MrBeast of Ireland or whatever?
I'll be honest, I don't like being in front of camera. I just never have. It's not even like, I don't think it's even a personality thing. It's just I'm quite reserved. I'm quite introverted, and a lot of YouTubers are. Yeah. But like that kind of content, that kind of like entertainment, I actually don't think I'd be that good at it, to be honest. And this is a question I actually get that quite a bit. It's like, you know so much about YouTube. Why don't you just put all that knowledge into just one channel and just make that like, like the MrBeast of Ireland or something or whatever. And it just, I could make money doing it. It could be fun. It could really work, but it just doesn't appeal to me. I actually love the dynamic I have now where essentially I get to work and co-run multiple channels at once. Just find it's more fun.
Would you say you're good at coming up with concepts for videos, then you're good at like coming up with like, MrBeast should do this video with this title, blah, blah. Or are you kind of just like, okay, he has this title, let's kind of like optimize that for each channel?
It does depend on the niche because, I can't really go into, let's say, a niche I don't understand and tell them what they should make. But if it's a niche that I understand well, for example, like business, I understand the business niche well. I understand like general entertainment, like what Jimmy does and what Jesser does and other people like that. It would be a kind of mix. Generally, when you're working with like 5 or 6 channels at the same time, it's very difficult to be like the brains or like the idea brains behind every single one at the same time. So it's usually optimizing what they have and just making it better and like thumbnail concepts and stuff like that. But I do come up with ideas too. I've given some people some banger ideas over the years. So yeah, I do a bit of both.
Who's the biggest creators that you have have you worked with or are working with at the moment?
Well, Jimmy I worked with for 5 months in 2021. So I work with him.
Quick flex.
Noah Kagan. He's not a big creator, but he's a really big entrepreneur. He's like number like 20 at Facebook or something, and then he founded his own company. He does like $200 million a year or something. So I have him as a client. Jesser, we've just hit 4 million yesterday. Actually, we hit 4 million yesterday. So he's another big client of mine. I've worked with Preston, Rebecca Zamolo, 11 million, Jordan Matter, 10 million, Infographics Show, 11 million, Red Bull, their main channel, 10.5 million. So like a lot of channels really, like a lot of the big ones I've worked with in some capacity.
Do you kind of like get a lot of satisfaction seeing, well obviously it's your job like to see the numbers go up and stuff, but do you get like satisfaction for seeing like a channel hit 10 million or 15 million? Like that's kind of your success as well.
100%. Like I on my phone right now, I could just open up YouTube Studio and I have maybe 100 channels across my different accounts that I can go into and just give myself that dopamine anytime. So I can just go in and just see, 1 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Like if I want to make myself feel good or bad, I can just open up that phone.
That's insane. So you already have MrBeast on that day.
I did when I was working with him, but when you stop working with him, you can't hold the date anymore. So I had to sign out.
I say that would be insane, just looking at all the numbers and stuff, like just
for a minute.
Insane.
Nuts. Absolutely nuts. It feels, I remember just having the studio just open, you just see like, just even the real time for the whole channel. And you're just seeing like real time 48 hours and it's like 40 or 50 million or something. And you're just like, 40 million views in a 48-hour period,
Did
Yeah,
you were you
that
working
was
with him when he
crazy.
had like just one channel, or was he? I think he must have had 2 or 3 channels at that stage, didn't he?
Yeah, he'd already launched because he launched the gaming in 2020, and I started working with him in January of 2021. So he had the gaming going. He had his main channel going, of course. He already had the Reacts channel and the Shorts channel, but he wasn't really posting as much on it.
Hmm.
And I remember when I was working with him, that was something that outside of what I was doing, other people were talking about, like getting the Reacts channel up and running again. And that's been insane. Like his Reacts channel is actually pretty fire.
Even his like Minecraft stuff that he does, like he can do like it's hard to like I don't even know what to put into words, but like he can do like a we'll say for example in real life he'll do surviving on a Mount Everest for 10 hours, and he'll do that in Minecraft and he'll pull like the same amount of views. It's insane. Like
Yeah, he just takes the complete same format
yeah,
from his main channel, like big spectacle, and he might spend 100 or 200 grand on a set for an IRL video, and then he just kind of scales that to Minecraft. So he doesn't spend as much because
hmm.
the margins are smaller and they're still huge, but they're not as big the revenues. But he just takes it and says, okay, instead of building a 100 grand set in real life, could I pay someone, I don't know, like 5 or 10 grand to build me an insane Minecraft set or something? I think that's kind of how they do things. I don't know the finances behind it, but it's very much the same kind of model of like big spectacles, lots of investment into it. And I work like one of my clients that I work closest with, I just work on every video with him. We sometimes write the intros together. We focus on thumbnails, titles, everything. His name is Dom Minecraft. He's got like, we're just about to hit 1 million, and we do kind of 2 or 3 million views a video, sometimes 4 or 5 million views a video. And we absolutely like, we work for those videos. Like we sink like 200 hours, mainly of his time into these videos. Like we grind on them. And then Jimmy, because of the kind of the scale of his brand and because of what he's built up and how insane his team is, he can kind of just record a video and the whole team around him can put together this product that will get 10 to 20 times more views than us, and
Yeah.
we're putting so much man hours into it. And that just shows you the scale he's at.
But he was saying on Joe Rogan's podcast, I don't know if you watched it, you probably did. He was like, everyone just does everything else. It's just about him like getting recordings, like doing just like in front of the camera stuff, and everyone just does the rest. That's insane. Like that's like a proper like insane like level to get to where everyone's doing everything else and just to face the operation. Like that's insane. Obviously he's involved in like the business stuff as well, but I'd say like because the whole business is like around him, so he has to be the face of it. Like I don't think you could put someone else's face in front of onto MrBeast's channel and like be like, okay, record. Like it just wouldn't work. Like
Yeah, no, I remember one of the first conversations we had, probably in 2020. He was like, essentially, when you think about it, the only thing I shouldn't be able to outsource is me, like my face, me actually in the videos. So like, if I'm not filming, I'm doing something that potentially I could pay someone else to do. But with that said, like I'm sure you're aware as well, like he's still so involved in the kind of decisions, like so thumbnail, title, like he's still so obsessive and thinking about that. I remember I even had a conversation with him a few weeks ago, and he was just basically told me all his videos for the next year, and he was just able to tell me like what thumbnails are going to look like, what the titles are. And yeah, he's kind of, when you get into that sort of stage, you can kind of analyze everything you do and you can see what makes the difference. So the things that make the difference for a YouTuber at that stage is being on camera, actually filming videos, and then final decisions, like which title, which thumbnail, which idea to move forward. So the vision. And it's actually it is insane, but it's very much like a CEO of a company, like Jeffrey Bezos isn't packing the Amazon parcels. He isn't like in there, like grinding in the office. He's making big decisions, or he was, at least when he was the CEO. I think it's that model, and a lot of YouTubers take the model of I have to do everything. So I like what those guys have done.
what would you say your job title is then? YouTube consultant, analyst? What's like your role or your title?
It's difficult because I think I call myself a consultant just because it's the most like well-known term out of anything. It's just like, oh, he's a consultant. But when I look at what I do, it's not just consulting, because what consulting is kind of coming in and giving recommendations. So coming in and saying, oh, I think you should do this. Here's some advice that you can take and you can do what you want with. Whereas with a lot of my clients, I actually am much more involved with the video process. So I actually, like I mentioned earlier, like I'm working on the idea, the title, the thumbnail, how it all pieces together, which ideas we make, which ideas we don't make. So I have a lot of skin in the game with them. So I think probably a better title is a strategist, a YouTube strategist, which is a title some people use. I'd say that's the job I kind of fill, but at the same time, I'm a business owner, so I have kind of like a service, like almost like an agency service that comes in and works with these clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a kind of blend of analyst, strategist, consultant, business owner all into one.
What's your daily schedule like then? What time do you wake up, and what's kind of like the what's kind of like on your plate for each day?
Wake up at 9 a.m. Rationale being, some people think, someone who's an entrepreneur, they wake up at like 4 or something. Yeah. I wake up at 9, and the rationale is most of my clients are in America. So I kind of operate like I'm on American time zone.
That's actually handy, to be fair.
A lot of my calls are a bit later in the evening. I'm usually working quite late. So usually get up at 9. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I go to the gym. Driving to the gym in Tullow, near where I live. I start work usually at 11. And my mornings are usually a mixture of admin work, creative work. So like writing a video, if I'm working on one of my own videos from my channel, or someone else, if I need to write a hook for them, or like come up with a thumbnail concept, that's kind of creative work in the morning. And in the afternoons are usually calls, business meetings, consulting calls, one-on-one calls, weekly check-ins with different clients. And I'd say I work from about 11 a.m. in the morning to about 11 p.m. typically. And I take a few breaks here and there, but it's generally that like straight period. So I work pretty hard from 11 to 11 pretty much. It's usually Monday to Friday, but quite often it's Saturday and Sunday as well, depending on how busy I am.
Yeah, that's solid. I don't want to ask like too personal question, but is the pay like decent? Okay, my question is like, do you get like a percentage of the revenue per video, or do you just get like paid for a service?
I offer both situations in my business, because, for example, like the big channels would rather just pay an hourly amount.
Yeah.
Because, it's like they look at that and they say a percentage of our revenue could be huge. But when someone is like maybe a smaller channel that I see a lot of upside with, like if they wanted to pay for 4 or 5 hours of my time a week, that gets very expensive very quickly. So with the situation like that, I can work in deals where it's like, instead of percentage per video, it might be a percentage of the total channel revenue for the period of time we work together. So let's just say it's 20% of their overall channel revenue for the 6 months we're working together. And it's kind of canceled at any time. I don't have any contracts or any of that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, definitely it's financially rewarding, because a lot of people do it, but I feel like I'm probably top 3 people that do this in the world. So like if you're looking for someone to pay to work with you, to improve your videos, to increase views, it costs. I typically charge around $500 to $600 an hour.
You do free consultations as well, don't you? You do like free. How regularly would you do that then?
I do like intro calls with clients I think I want to potentially work with. So let's just say there's a big channel and they're like, "Hey, Paddy, we want to work with you. Could we get on a call to chat about it?" I'll just jump on a call and sometimes just help them out for free, but just to hear kind of maybe it's a good fit for us or maybe it's not. And then I also just do lots of giveaways. So like I give away free calls on my Instagram, on Twitter as well. So I try to kind of mix in. Like I had a guy yesterday who there's no way he would have ever been able to afford, no offense to the guy, but there's no way he'd ever been able to afford to book in an hour with me. But I just did a free call with him because he won a giveaway on Twitter. And it was like kind of rewarding because he was like, Paddy, this has been so valuable for my channel and I would have had no way of being able to afford this otherwise. And or when I say the number, it sounds like a lot when I say kind of $500, $600 an hour.
Yeah.
But the truth is a huge amount of prep goes into that as well. So like, it's not just that 1 hour I'm on a call. It's like it's all the years of experience as well put together. And it's definitely aligning with who I'm targeting. You will find that I have worked with lots of small channels, but generally my biggest clients are usually making 50K minimum a month. That's where most of my clients would fall and above, and some of them a lot more than that. So like when you think about it, for that size of a channel, if working with me could increase views by 10%, it would pay for itself. And I've actually worked with people where I've increased views by 5x, 10x. So it's like it's such a good investment for big channels, not as good of an investment for small channels unless they have the money to spare. Yeah,
I'm kind of like in the mindset that if you can't afford to obviously hire someone like yourself to put in as much effort and time to learning the craft as you can, so like making sure you understand it yourself, having at least like a base foundation or base knowledge of like what YouTube is and what clicks and what people like and all that stuff. When you like start looking at a channel, what's the first thing you like break down and say like, okay, you need to change this, you need to work on this? Or how do you, another question as well, how do you like, say if someone's on camera and they're like, okay, after 30 seconds you're seeing a massive dip, how do you like get into someone and be like, okay, listen, you need to work on this at this point and, you know, change the pace or blah blah. Like what's the resolution to seeing like a dip in performance?
I mean, when I first actually open up a channel, like there's a couple things I do. The first thing I want is studio access, so we can look at the data and compare it to what we're seeing in the videos. Honestly, the very first thing I'm thinking is the direction, because a lot of people focus really heavily on retention and really heavily on just thumbnails and titles, and that's obviously super important on YouTube. But without a clear direction of what you're trying to make or what kind of channel you are, the biggest thing on YouTube is ideas. That's the most important thing. Like the ideas, the topics you choose, that's everything. Like your topic strategy, what videos you're going to make. So when I go into a channel, the first thing I'm kind of critiquing is like, okay, what are we making? What are we trying to be as a channel? What videos have performed well for us in the past? What ones haven't? What can we learn from it? And try to make a kind of a plan for almost like their programming. So like how often they post, what they post, what the overall strategy is for the channel. It's like the first thing I point at. But then I look at the more specific things. So I go into the studio, let's say look at retention curves. It's pretty easy for me to sort of set goals for people, because I've seen so much data that if I just say on Twitter, you should aim for 80% retention at the 30-second mark. That's like roughly a good idea, but for some niches that's impossible.
Yeah.
And for some niches that's really easy. You know, for like Minecraft, I find that's quite easy to do. And anyone that's a Minecraft viewer that's going to listen to this after is probably going to be super annoyed hearing that. But
I think for gaming as well, I think gaming has like an easier, like, you know, time at like getting easier views, and like it's not as expensive to make. It's just like you're sitting in front of the camera like we're doing now, and you know, if you're good at it, you know, make your, you know, if you have a good personality or whatever, if you have good like ideas and concepts, you'll be flying it. Like
that is true to a certain point, but with that comes a lot more competition.
Yeah,
that's the difficulty thing, because it's easier to make. There is more competition for it, so that's the only flip side of it. But generally, I do find that it's very possible to get those really high retention numbers with gaming. Like I have a client at the moment where at least when we first released the video, we're getting like 70% consistently. Roblox, which is a very similar game to Minecraft, but actually Roblox retention is more difficult. It's somewhat to do with maybe the younger audience, just maybe clicking off earlier. It just seems to be harder to hold really good retention on Roblox. So I never really set arbitrary goals, but because I will have the context of what the channel is, and also the context of probably working with other channels in a similar niche, in a similar sort of style of content. Sometimes it's not even the same niche, it's just maybe a similar style. Maybe it's a listicle, so like 7 tips or 7 steps to dress with more style or whatever. So I can kind of use that internal knowledge I have to say, right, at your 30-second mark, you've got 64. I think we can hit 75, at least in the first few days of the video being released.
Yeah.
So let's look at the video. Let's break down what you said. Let's see how I think it could be better.
Where are you from, Carlo?
Yeah, Carlo. I've been living here. Actually, I moved over. I was actually born in London. My dad's Scottish, my mother was Irish. Was born in London, and then when I was like 3, we moved over to Carlo here. Went to school in Baltinglass and Wicklow. But yeah, on the kind of border between Carlo, Kildare, Wicklow, that's where I live.
It's actually mad impressive. Well, obviously with the internet, it's not really that impressive because like you can talk to whoever the fuck you want, but like it's actually like being from Carlo, like pretty much the middle of nowhere, like, and you know, setting up like your own kind of like business is fairly impressive. Like I can't lie.
Yeah, I mean, even with the internet thing, man, I until like 3 years ago, I had like terrible internet.
Yeah,
it was called rural Wi-Fi, and man, it was like a megabyte download speed.
Yeah.
So I was like, because I've been doing YouTube since I was like I said earlier, like 11 or 12, you know. Yeah. So I was there when I was like 12, and if I wanted to upload a video on Saturday, I'd start uploading it on Thursday.
I was the same actually. When I was younger, it was like it would literally take like 12-15 hours to upload a video. Now it's kind of like that. Like with a podcast now, it would literally take me a day and a half to upload this full podcast, like an hour and a half. It's you know, the struggles of living in Ireland, you know.
Yeah, literally. But no, I think about that sometimes. It definitely is a bit of a different background or backdrop to start a business in, you know, Carlo. Yeah. And like I'm still here now. I've been thinking of moving to different places for a while. I lived in Dublin for 5 years. moved back here. I'm in my family home at the moment. Moved back here when the pandemic hit, just because I was like, I'm not paying 2K a month to rent a box when I can't even leave the box, you know. So I moved back home here, and yeah, it's fine though. It's nice because I actually have like we have some like space out the back, countryside around. You know, it's not too bad. Like you don't feel too like there's not too many distractions, I suppose. Like essentially, if I'm not working, what am I doing? Like there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, I'm more of a country
Which is an
person as well.
advantage.
Like I find it way more easier to like focus on what you're doing if you're in the countryside with no like there's no trains, like there's nothing going on here. Like it's
Yeah.
just serene, I guess.
Like when you're in Dublin, I remember living in Dublin. I lived in Milltown, in this tiny little room in Milltown, and you know, I'd come home from work because I used to work a 9 to 5 for a year, and I used to come home and I was like, I could do some work now, or I just get a text from one of the mates, and it's just like, we're in the the Camden Exchange or something, or we're in this bar. Do you want to come in for a chat? And it's just so easy because I could just get to Lewis and there in like 8 minutes. Whereas now, and it's kind of funny because the flip side of it is you don't have as much of a life because you're just working all the time. But now it's like, I mean, like even today, I'm working today, so like later today, a mate could text me and say, "Hey, Paddy, do you want to meet up?" And of course, I still try to have a social life as well, but it's like, yeah, okay, I have to drive the car, I have to find parking. It takes me like a half an hour or an hour to get there. You know, it's a lot more kind of stress and effort to organize
Yeah.
things, which means less of a life, but more work in a way.
What do you like explain to people what you do? Like, how do you go about being like, oh, I'm a YouTube consultant. This is what I do.
Yeah, I actually hate it. It's just especially in Ireland because like people just think people honestly just don't understand how mad it is. Like they just think, oh, you just make silly YouTube videos or something. You know, it depends on the generation. Like people like your age and above or below even like you get it, but even people my age, like like as I said, I'm 26, but like still people my age, you just don't always get it. They're like, how could you be full time on you? Like, wait, you work with other YouTube, what? You know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
some of these YouTubers here have like teams of like 50 people, and they're doing like millions and millions in revenue, sometimes every month, and still people don't understand how it works. They're like, how does that work? And I'm like, the Late Late Show gets 500,000 viewers per episode if they're lucky.
Yeah.
They have like 50 people working on it. They pay Ryan Tuberty like 400 grand a year or something, right? All this madness, right? I work with YouTubers who sometimes get 5 or 10 million views a video. Can you not see where the money could be? You know,
Yeah.
but they'd have no problem understanding how like television works. That's what I've noticed a lot. But quite often I just say, you know, I'm a business owner. That's what I say when I'm in the credit union or something. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, where's this deposit coming from? I'm just a business owner.
Yeah.
Like, and who'd you work for? Work for Google. That's that's
Yeah.
what I say sometimes. It's just handier than being like, yeah, I do all this. I was in a Thai actually in Kildare recently, and I was fishing because I had sometimes fish in my spare time. And this fella comes up to me and he's just talking away to me, this old guy. And he goes, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I own a business. And he goes like, oh yeah, and what does that business do? And I was just saying in my head, will I go and explain the whole thing to him, or will I just say something else? So I just go, oh, we just fix computers. And he was like, oh really? And then it kept going. He's like, I have a computer at home there I want fixing. And I was like, oh shit, no, this is a bad idea. But yeah, it's sometimes difficult to explain to people.
Yeah, it's not in Ireland. It's just not easy to be like, here, listen, I make YouTube videos on the internet. You know, oh look at me, I'm class. And then you get the people who are like, oh, you think you're better than the rest of us, do you? Like,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
how would you start getting into like consulting? Because you said you did YouTube videos since you're like what 10. So how did you kind of like? Because obviously I know you get the experience from you've been doing it for like 12 years or whatever. But like, how have you been like? How would you kind of just get into being a consultant? Over instead of being like, okay, I want to be a YouTuber, okay, consultant.
So I mean, it definitely came from doing YouTube first, and I give that advice to people a lot when they're like, "Hey, I want to work with YouTubers." I'm like, "Well, at least try YouTube yourself first and see if you like it and see if you're good at it, and see if you figure it out." So, like, I think I said it once on a podcast before, but I counted it one time, and I've started like 50 channels myself, and I would say 98% of them failed. By failed I mean they didn't make much money.
Yeah.
But I've had a few, like a couple of ones that did work out, and basically then I started my own channel when I was, I think it was 2015 when I started my current channel, and I was essentially at the time really obsessed with YouTube like I am now. And I just found like the YouTube advice videos at the time were just really weak. I don't mean weak as in like they weren't good information, but a lot of them were just kind of very like how to set up your channel or how to get your first 1,000 subscribers. And I was like, who's showing like the really cutting edge stuff that bigger channels are doing?
Yeah.
So I was like taking notes myself on other channels. So I was studying this channel called Peter McKinnon. I was taking notes on him.
He's
like,
class.
I just wrote this almost. He is, yeah. I wrote this big essay on him, kind of like how he grew. And I was using it for myself first. Like I was like, this is just research I'm doing for myself to learn how to do other different channels and different niches. And I just looked at it. I was like, this could actually be a video. Made the video, uploaded to my current channel. On the channel, I already had maybe 10 or 15,000 subscribers because I was posting some other videos beforehand that weren't as focused on like YouTube advice. Made that video. First week or so, it just completely flopped. I did like a few hundred views or something, and I was like, nah, this doesn't work. And I remember I was in an office in Dublin, and someone just came up to me. And I kind of roughly knew this guy, so it wasn't like it was a complete stranger, but he was just like, oh, Paddy, I watched your YouTube video. And I was like, what? Wait, which one? And he was like, the Peter McKinnon one. And I was like, oh, really? And I was like, geez, he must be one of the 200 people that saw that. That's mad. And then I go back home anyway, and I look at it. I don't think even YouTube Studio was on your phone back then. I don't think I even had it on my phone. And I go home and I open up the computer, open up YouTube Studio, 250,000 views on the video. And I was like, this can work. This is an actual niche, and there's other people who are really interested in this content. Next few days, Peter McKinnon himself retweets it and says he really liked the video. The video itself just keeps spiraling. Gets, I think it's on like 1.1 million views now. And since then, I just kept posting these kind of the breakdown videos that people know me from. And the way I went into consulting, to tie it back to your question, was actually not purposeful. Like I didn't purposely just sit there and say, I think I want to do this, or that wasn't my plan at the start, which is actually a piece of advice I always give people. Like if you're trying to build a business, just start doing something and then the rest might, kind of piece together later. And essentially I just started getting these emails from big YouTubers that were like, hey, I really like the information you share in your videos. You know a lot about YouTube. Are you looking for a job? Are you looking for some part-time work? Will you come and help me or to take a look at my channel? So I started doing bits and pieces there. And when I say like, I wasn't charging much. It wasn't like a big thing, it wasn't a big money maker for me or anything. But I started working with one channel in particular, and I don't mind name dropping it. The channel was called Loverfella. Great guy called Zach, great team as well. And I think at the time I was starting to work with him, he had about 1 million subscribers or 1.5 million subscribers. Started working with him, worked on a very regular basis. So I worked on every single video, worked a good few hours per week with him. And I just learned an insane amount because I already knew a lot about YouTube, having done so much content myself. But now there's a channel I'm working with that is doing millions of views per month, like 10, 15, 20 million views a month. By the time we left, it was doing like 50. By the time I left, it was doing like 50 or 60 million views a month. And I was like, damn, this is insane. So I was working with him, and I remember him just saying like, the stuff you're doing with me is so valuable. It's really helpful. I was basically just going through, looking at the data, helping with ideas, helping with titles, helping with thumbnails. And I was like, actually, I'm providing a lot of value here, and this can really help a lot of YouTubers out. And there's very few people they can go to, because like, who do they go to? Like a business professional, a marketing manager, who do they come to say, help me with my ideas? It's very hard,
Yeah.
So after that point, I was like, there's a lot of value here. And essentially everything that's happened since has never necessarily been me trying to put myself out there to get work. It's been people reaching out to me. So something I say all the time, I don't even say it, it's not really a brag point, but it's just true. I've never actually DM'd someone or messaged someone or emailed someone asking to work with them. It's always been the other way around.
Yeah.
And that goes back to even the biggest clients I've landed. Like I didn't send a DM saying, hey, I want to work with you. It's been like, hey, I like your channel. I like what you're doing with this person. I hear from word of mouth that you're doing this. Do you want to work with me too? So nearly everything has been a mixture of word of mouth and people just coming to me. And it kind of started like there. I never sat out there at the start and said, I'm going to be a YouTube consultant. It was just, here's what I'm doing for people. What do I call that? Oh, I suppose it's YouTube consulting.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it formed.
I think that goes for everything though in life. If you want to be something, it's not like, obviously you can put yourself out there, but like, I think if you can just like make good work, and if you're reliable and you're known for having good work or a good reputation, then the big people will come to you. I see a lot of people trying to get like brands or whatever, and they're like reaching out to like, oh, Nike, come and, can I work with you? I want a shoe. I want a ninja shoe as well. And it's like, if you're doing a good job, they'll get in touch with you. Like, that's the way the world works. Like, they'll want to invest in you. They'll see that. Like, if you're doing good stuff, people will understand. They'll see what you're doing and where you're going right, I suppose. I wanted to ask what's the current meta with content? What's the main things you should look out for? Is it retention? Is it like average view time? Like what's the meta that everyone should kind of like be looking to base their content off of?
I think that there's a sentence I was using recently to explain to someone that I think it's really simple, but it actually perfectly describes how you should be optimizing content. So videos the right people click and watch and love. Now, there's a few parts there, like obviously the click, so that's the title and thumbnail. The watch, that's, how much they're watching for the retention. But then also the right people, that's important. And then also the love factor. So the right people and the love factor I find is very overlooked. So what I mean by the right people is knowing your audience, knowing your actual avatar of who watches your content. Because I see this all the time where people think like, this is the YouTube meta. So maybe they have got an audience that likes, their watch videos, and suddenly they just try to put in these like crazy fast-paced cuts and like all this crazy stuff. And the person's just like, hey, I'm like a 50-year-old dude that wants to watch this for, a watch, you talking about a watch. I don't want to see like this craziness, Mm-hmm. So knowing who the right audience is, knowing who the audience you're trying to target, that's a huge part of the formula. But then also the love side of the formula. So essentially in 2016, I believe it was, YouTube started to really focus on the fact that not all watch time is equal. So you could watch 100% of one video and 100% of the other video, but maybe you liked one video, but you loved the other one. Like you really enjoyed the other one. So YouTube have been trying to measure and figure out which videos provide the most satisfaction, which is what they call viewer satisfaction. And that is the love part of the equation. So they look at things like signals such as shares, such as they do look at likes a certain amount, not as much as people think, but they do look at likes and other sort of user signals like that. And whether they go and watch other videos afterwards, and different signals to the algorithm that shows that people really engage and love this type of content. So when I get asked the question like what the current YouTube meta is, I just say keep saying that sentence back to yourself. The right people click, watch, love. Who are the people you're trying to make videos for? How can you make thumbnails and titles that just are irresistible to click? When you get the person in the door, how can you just get crazy retention? How can you hold retention for as long as possible? And how can you make sure that you're not just holding retention for the sake of it? You're not just like saying, keep watching because there's going to be something cool. And then by the end, it's like, well, that wasn't that cool. So actually going and trying to deliver exceptional videos that just make people go, damn, like I need to share this. I need to tell someone else about this. I need to go watch 4 or 5 of his other videos because this video was so good. So that's kind of what I say. It's obviously quite simplistic, but that's how I think about it.
Provoking like emotion in people, I think, is important as well. Like if you can make someone laugh, like that's a winning formula in itself. Like
exactly. And I think YouTube thought about it was like, most of the things YouTube do in terms of changes in how content is distributed, nearly everything is rooted in data that they see and what provokes positive experiences. And when you think about it, a lot of other platforms, and I won't throw shade at them, but a lot of other platforms, their algorithms are engineered to create engagement. So when you think of like Facebook and you think of maybe Twitter to a certain extent, it's not just about giving people positive experiences. It's about like provoking them to like get involved in the conversation and engage with things. So if you go onto like a Twitter feed, you see stuff all the time you disagree with, and it just makes you like click it and go like, hey, that's stupid, like that's wrong, or I don't agree with this or whatever. It triggers you. Whereas if you go on YouTube, I'm not saying this is the same for everyone, but generally speaking, YouTube are trying to kind of cultivate a more positive experience so that overall you're enjoying the videos more. There's less. It sounds funny saying there's less toxicity on YouTube because there's plenty of it, but when you compare it to some of the stuff on other platforms, I think it's pretty like it's not as crazy, it's not as intense. Like they generally try to show content that people have a fun time watching, because they know if people have this positive experience every time they open the YouTube app, they're going to do it again and again and again, and they're going to get more overall watch time as a platform. So trying to find videos that create emotion. Like you think of even the channel that's grown the fastest over the last 2 years, 3 years, MrBeast, like that is his bread and butter. Everyone says he's a clickbait master. Everyone says he's a retention genius. And both those things are completely true. And him and his team work on that. And he's got some incredible people working with him. But the other part of the formula is he makes videos that genuinely heartwarm people. And even just the lengths he goes to do things in his content, that creates satisfaction because you're like, wow, he did all that for me. Or he pushed the boat out with this one. He did something no one else has done before. So I think the general meta on YouTube is just effort. Effort is rewarded, and putting in that extra effort and knowing where that extra effort comes from. Because some people here put more effort into your videos, and they spend like 20 hours setting up their camera, or like they get like 10 different camera angles. And it's like effort isn't just about how much time you spend producing the content. It's also about how much time you spend thinking about which content is best, thinking about maybe how the intro flows, thinking about the title, the thumbnail. It like has to be across the whole package instead of just in production.
Yeah, having like the idea and have like multiple narratives and different things to kind of like follow in the background, I think is really important as well.
Yeah. So long as it's still easy to follow, that's the key thing. Some people go overboard and they have too many narratives and too much stuff happening.
Do you find different age demographics have like they have an easier time responding to certain stuff, and you could lose an age demographic by kind of prioritizing a younger age demographic? Is like, does MrBeast have like an issue with that? I wonder.
I would say it does to a certain extent. Like if you went to a breakdown of his viewers, there's probably a lot less a lot less people in their 50s and 60s that would enjoy it when compared to a 14-year-old boy. So yeah, like it's difficult to make content that appeals to absolutely everyone. And if you try to do content that appeals to absolutely everyone, you then might not have anyone that really loves it. It's just lots of people that goes like, oh, that was kind of easy to watch, but no one loves it. So it's like you have to kind of figure out roughly what your demographic is and make it for them. But if you take like the MrBeast example, I do think if you compare his videos to a lot of other people a lot of other creators who make kind of entertainment videos, I think his ones are a lot easier to follow. They're actually slower. Everyone thinks MrBeast is super fast paced in his editing, but he is at times. He's fast paced when he wants to get through boring stuff, but he does like take time to explain things, and he doesn't speak at a million miles an hour. It's kind of like very emphasized. His speech is his cadence and speech is very emphasized over what he's talking about. So I think in his situation, he's probably a bit more universally friendly in that way than maybe someone like a Matthew Beam, if you've ever seen his videos before.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, they're great for that young audience, but they're just like a shotgun. They're just like bang, 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 we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this, and there's text flying, and you can't imagine like a 40-year-old wanting to watch that.
Yeah.
So different audience behavior, different audiences like different things. And it's not just about age, it's also about the type of content. So like I said earlier, like if you take my videos, for example, some people have said, Paddy, like you talk about like some of these people having really fast-paced editing, but your editing's kind of slow. Like your videos are quite methodical and they move like that. But I still get pretty good retention in my videos. And the rationale is my videos are explaining something. Whereas let's say a gaming video, that's just entertainment, So when you're maybe explaining something, you're trying to teach someone something, it's not just about like fast-paced. You need to give people enough time to process what's on screen. Otherwise it just gets too messy. So I've hired lots of animators and editors to make my videos at different points, and the issue a lot of them come back with is just like they give me this piece of content and it looks amazing, but I'm like, hold on a minute, imagine you didn't know anything I said in this video and try to follow it, and it's like, oh yeah, we give the viewer no time to understand what you meant there, or no time to process what's on screen, or it's like different niches, different audiences all need different things. I think that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. There's no one way to do things. There's no one method. There's no one way to do things. Like people can get success in so many different areas.
What's it like having a faceless channel? Because I've never done content where I've just kind of like maybe narrated or like voice over to anything. It's kind of just like I turn the camera and just start talking. Kind of. What's it like being? What are the different challenges with a faceless channel that you wouldn't have with like like MrBeast would, for example?
So a difficulty with a faceless channel usually is they don't convert as well to like a off-platform thing. So for example, if you're selling merch or if you're selling like a product or something, they usually don't convert as well because you don't have that personal eye-to-eye connection with someone. And even for brand deals, like brands will see that when they do a deal with a faceless channel, and let's say they get 100k views, and they do a deal with a channel with a face and a personality, and they get 100k, the face and the personality greatly overperforms in most situations. So that is one struggle, and that's one con. Luckily, I've been a bit resistant to that because while I'm a faceless channel, I still like show my face in my profile picture. I still have it on Twitter. People know who I am. They see a bit of my personality as well. They know I'm the kind of YouTube guy. So it kind of works in that way for me. But in terms of the pros, I just like the fact that 20, 30 million people have seen my videos, but I can walk down any street anywhere and people don't recognize me. I've been recognized like maybe 7-8 times in my whole life from people I didn't know. mostly in Dublin. You know, people are just like, oh, Paddy Galloway, right? Watch like that. That's happened to me a couple of times. And even though I don't have like this massive channel, I've had friends that maybe have a similar amount of views and similar amount of subscribers, and in certain cities, they're just constantly being stopped. Or they get like these texts. They're on the train or something, and they get this text on their Instagram request. They go in and they say, "I'm looking at you right now," and like I just feel like that's kind of weird and a bit freaky. So I like that side of things. I like the fact you're kind of a bit more anonymous and you can just walk around anywhere. Like I feel like even if I had 2 or 3 million subscribers, I could walk around Dublin for a whole day and never get recognized. Whereas if I had 2 or 3 million subscribers on a channel that has my face in it, like some of the big Irish YouTubers, I even think like Jacksepticeye or people like that, you know, they'll get mobbed if they go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and even like I mean, with my type of content, it's never going to be like lots of young kids coming up because like I make videos for YouTubers, so it's a bit more niche. But even at that, it's like you get that sort of level of, you know, privateness, and you have to just kind of go about your life as if, you know, no one knows who you are. And then as well, I think another advantage is sometimes just it's another thing you don't have to think about. So I said to you earlier, like I don't actually really like being on camera. It's just something I don't like doing, and that's one of the reasons I love working with people who are good on camera. So the clients I'm working with in America, Jesser, he's amazing on camera. He's just phenomenal on camera. He's just naturally talented at it. So I can work with him, and we can build something insane together. But if that was me on camera, I feel like I'd let it down, you know, because I just don't have the
Charisma.
maybe on screen charisma for it. Yeah, and it's a very different thing like outside of it. Like I think if you meet me in real life, or if you work with me in real life, I'm pretty humorous. Like I've got good energy. I'm not just like this kind of like super introverted, shy guy or anything. But when a camera comes on, I just kind of freeze a little bit. It's never just been my thing. I've never felt comfortable with it. So it's another thing I don't have to think about. It's just like, well, I just have to record my voice and make the animation, and that's all I have to think about.
Actually, did you like study in college, like how to do animation, or was that just kind of like something you figured out yourself?
So I use a software called VideoScribe, and it's honestly really intuitive because they have like a lot of the drawings in there for you, and then you just pick how it comes in or how it animates. So it's actually pretty easy what I do. I don't do like completely custom bespoke animation for every section of the video.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just pre-made stuff that I just decide where it moves and stuff like that. But no, completely self-taught. I went to DCU and I studied a course called MINT, MINT, which is like a mix of kind of like a mix of marketing, business, computers, technology, all in one. So it was a pretty interesting course, but has no relation to anything I do now at all.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
What was your career path kind of like? I suppose when you were younger, where were your thoughts being like, okay, what do I want to do as a career? And when did you kind of like stumble across being like, okay, I want to do this YouTube thing. I want to be like a YouTube consultant. Where did that kind of like all come from, or what point in your life did that come from?
Up until the age of 10, I wanted to play for Manchester United. That was it. That was the dream. Centre mid, number 8. Roy Keane's legacy. I was going to carry it on. But then I realized I was okay at soccer. I was pretty good. I was pretty good soccer, at least when I was younger, but you know, I wasn't going to make it pro. I had a few friends that got trials and I didn't, and I was like, damn, this isn't going to work. After that point, I think I honestly didn't really see YouTube as necessarily a career. I saw it as a side hustle when I was younger. I saw it as like a way to like make some money on the side, and I was also just really passionate about it. Like when I first started posting videos in 2007, 2008, I never once thought, you know, I could make money doing this. It wasn't until I got a bit older and I realized, oh, other people, this YouTuber I've watching, he's just bought an Audi TT. You know, how did that happen? You know, maybe I could make money doing this as well. So it took a while to realize it was actually a potential career. And honestly, like I always knew I just had an insane drive, and I've always had a really strong drive and work ethic. And I just knew I'd do something, and I'd just try as hard as I could to make that thing successful. But like between the ages of let's say 15 to 20, I was like, I want to be a physiotherapist. I want to be a scientist. I want to be a lawyer. Like I just it just changed every.
I
like,
could
few
see you as a
months.
physiotherapist. I could see that.
I kept changing. That was the physiotherapist thing was something that I thought about for a long time. I was like, yeah, I'd like to do that because I was really into sport and I thought that would be a decent career. But and then essentially when I went to college, and then I got a job working in a marketing agency, and I worked 9 to 6, even though like some days it was like 9 to 9, because it's like we did these events and they were like super intense in the lead up to them, like lots of work, and I was the the marketing manager for the whole event. So I do all the ad campaigns and everything. And I was doing that while I had my main channel that I have at the moment on the side. And it was at that point I kind of realized, I could start at the very bottom of the corporate ladder, like working in marketing or working in law or business or whatever. Or I could work in an industry where I know more than 99% of people. Like most people do not understand YouTube. I do. And I was like, the ladder, I'd be much higher up that ladder because I already have that skill set there. But at the time, even back then, even like 5 or 6 years ago, YouTube wasn't as developed. There wasn't really such a big of a thing as like a consultant or a strategist or a business behind YouTube or anything like that. But I started to see that as an opportunity, and essentially in 2018, 2019, I just went for it. Even as soon as or as near as like 2020, I wasn't 100% sure though, because in 2020 I got a job offer to work in a big tech firm in Dublin, and I actually accepted it because it was decent. It was decent money. It was big company, massive company, and I was like, this could be cool. So I actually accepted the job offer, and I kept doing YouTube in the background, and the job kept getting delayed because of COVID. So like COVID came along, they kept delaying the job, and I was starting to work with other YouTubers. I was doing all this stuff. I was making more money, actually considerably more money myself than I would have got paid in the job. So because that job got delayed, I just ended up ringing them up and was like, hey, I started my own business. I don't want to do this anymore. Can I cancel my acceptance? And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. That's okay. Best of luck. And to this day, I'm like, I wonder if COVID never happened and that job didn't get delayed, maybe I would have started it, and then I wouldn't have done all that I'm doing now. Because now I look back and I'm like, it would have been a great job, and I don't knock anyone doing the kind of corporate road, but I would have been like at the very bottom of a 50,000 person company, And now I'm in a position where I'm lucky to be my own boss. I work when I want. I work as much as I want. Obviously, I work a lot because I like working. If I don't enjoy working with a client, I can fire them tomorrow. Luckily, I enjoy working with all my clients, and I love them all. So yeah, it's been a pretty crazy trajectory.
Do you ever get clients who are just like, you need to fuck up, like you need to like work harder, or is that kind of like part of your job, kind of like motivating your clients to be like, okay, come on, what are you doing here? You're slacking the last couple of weeks, not been great, come on.
Pete, I never want to have that as part of my service, because I think then that like makes you feel like more like a therapist or a motivational speaker than a a consultant or a strategist. So I don't like thinking of that, but I find a lot of clients tell me like you've really pushed me. So I like pushing people to be like, I'm not the kind of guy to be like, you only got one chance, you need to make this happen or anything. But I'm the kind of guy to be like, no, we can do better than that. Come on, let's push this. I think we can do more views here. And like, yeah, what like a client I took on last November, I've just been sort of in his ear the whole time and in the team's ear the whole time saying, we can get to 100 million views a month. We can hit these numbers. We can do this. And I think sometimes you just like teams just need someone that it's not even motivation. It's more just like someone that has done that and knows how to do that with people and has the vision to help make that happen. So yeah, it does happen, but generally speaking, because I'm very lucky to be in a position where I turn down 99% of the opportunities I get offered. Because I'm in that position, I get to pick people that I think would be good to work with. So the people I pick to work with are usually people who I feel like they're in big opportunities, like they're in big niches, or they have like a lot of opportunity ahead of them. But then also they're really easy to work with. So if I find someone difficult to work with, I just don't work with them.
Yeah, it's. I feel like in your line of work, you don't want people wasting their time either. You want people who are like working. Do you find it hard to find people who have the same work ethic do you have? Does that ever piss you off when someone's not like kind of working to the point that you are? Like if you're putting like a lot of effort into someone, you're putting like a lot of your time every week into someone. Are you kind of like, you kind of need to, match my energy kind of, or no?
Generally, because I think if you look at the clients I have, like every client I have at the moment, like full-time clients, like people I'm working with on a weekly, sometimes daily basis, all of those were already relatively big channels before I took them on. Because one of my favorite things is taking good to great, like taking a channel that's already doing pretty well and then just scaling them from there. Because I think that's where my real skill set is.
Is that easier or harder than taking someone from 0 to 100?
It's a different challenge because I think it requires more skill and more knowledge and more experience. because essentially everyone thinks about, oh, like if someone's already doing well and you come in and just make them better, that's easier than someone doing bad and making them good. But what I find generally is like a lot of YouTubers are just stuck at this plateau. Like if like I had a client that I took on in November and he was just stuck at the same views for like 2 years. So to be able to come in there, the thing is when you work with someone that's already good, you now have something to lose as well as something to gain. So there's a different pressure, because if you come in and you give them bad recommendations, or if it doesn't work, which luckily has never happened to me, and eventually it will, because like no one's perfect, then you have like the potential to lose revenue. Maybe you'll end up making them less money, and that's why if someone is trying to be a YouTube consultant, it's sometimes very difficult to like do what I do, because you have to go into a channel that's making 50K a month and they expect you to help them make 100K a month. What happens if in your first few months you end up going down to 30K a month? You've just cost them 20K a month, you know? So like it's a different kind of pressure. I think it's much more pressure. But the beginner YouTubers, it's just difficult because you don't really know if they're good enough yet. You don't know if they have the skills. But if you're working with someone that like John, that I did a few calls with in 2021, like we talked about earlier, if you're working with someone like him, it's pretty easy to work with him, because he was in our first call. He was like, I'm willing to take 5 years to make this happen. It wasn't like, hey, Paddy, help me blow up tomorrow, you know? So it's a different challenge, but the way I think about it generally is, and this is just being completely frank, obviously the bigger channels have bigger budgets and they can afford to pay me, you know, and it's also more valuable to them sometimes, because, you know, my fees could end up being just 5% of their total revenue. Whereas to a smaller channel, my fees could be 30, 40, 50%. And I just don't like that dynamic either, because then it feels like, you know, I'm putting a strain on them. I'm charging too much almost. So I would just rather work with someone where there's clear value. Now, of course, I do work with small channels too, but that's generally why I focus on the bigger ones.
You ever tell someone that they have to take like a little month or two to like change their content and like almost like take the dip, take the hit, and then to like come back stronger? Is that something that happens a lot?
It is. It's just so difficult for people to do that. So I've had plenty of times where I've been like, hey, let's say you're doing 2 million views a video doing this style, but you want to get to 10 million views a video. Sometimes you need to take an L on views while you figure that out. But what happens is everyone's like, yeah, I'll do that. But then when it comes down to it and they see those 10 out of 10s, they're like, no, I'm going back to what works. You know, they don't want to experiment. So I have had situations like that, but it's extremely difficult to navigate, because essentially you're basically telling someone, forego short-term revenue for the long term. And everyone says, oh yeah, I do that. But then when it's like you're making considerably less than you were before, it's suddenly like, oh, actually, never mind. I preferred being safe and doing what I was doing before.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the people I took on last year, we've 5 to 10x views per month, and we've posted a third of the videos that they were doing before. Like they were posting 3 or 4 a week. Now we're posting like 1 a week max. And it took like a short-term bit of like thinking about that and kind of figuring that out, because in your head you're like, oh, less videos, less revenue, less views. But, you know, it's worked because we just put more focus on them. So yeah, that comes down to your original question a few minutes ago about like, do you find people that are difficult to work with or are hard to kind of motivate or keep on your same kind of level? And because I can select, I'm usually pretty good at whittling that down. But generally YouTubers, if they've already got to a certain level, they're pretty hardworking. So that's usually not a problem. It's more, the thing I sometimes struggle with is just trying to find people to hire that can push it like me and go to those levels. But I've got some killer people working for me.
Yeah, I mean, you've a personal assistant. Who else do you like hire? Like, how many people are like involved in your business at the moment?
So I've got a PA. I've got a bookkeeper and like an accountant that looks after my accounting stuff. I've got a strategist, so like almost like a junior consultant that works with me with a lot of my clients, and he now takes on his own clients too within the business. And then like I have lots of contractors, so like video editors, thumbnail designer. That, for example, if I need help with a client, he'll come in and work with that. But in terms of people that are actually employees, it's like 4, 3 or 4 in the business. But I'm looking to, like, if someone came to me and they were like, I'm a really good YouTube strategist, I'd hire them.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like I would hire more people if I thought there was enough good people to hire.
Yeah, not bad. The biggest question I was getting on Twitter was, how do you grow? I mean, you know, this is pretty standard question, but like, how do you grow when you have nothing? You've no viewers, you have no subscribers, you've no like no real direction. How would you grow if you were starting again from zero? Because you've obviously done it a few times yourself.
Yeah. I think the first thing is getting good enough to even warrant that question. Like so making enough videos to the point where I don't necessarily say to a small YouTuber they should be getting too caught up in like, am I growing? Unless they've posted 50 or 100 videos. And it is that cliche of like, oh, just post videos and eventually you'll figure it out. But genuinely, if you haven't posted 50 to 100 videos, you shouldn't even really be paying too much focus on how things are going or how big you've got or how small you are or whatever. I just think first thing is just volume, because you need that volume. I see all the time, the person who just studies everything. They study all my tweets, they study my videos, they study other people on Twitter. They work and they just spend ages working on this video and they release it and it gets 10 views and they're like, YouTube's a rigged game. I did everything these people said. And it's like, yeah, except one thing. You've only made 2 videos or 3 videos. You need to do that same thing 50 more times. And that's where it kind of weeds out the people who just want to play YouTube like a game and the people who actually want to take this seriously and make something of it. So yeah, the first thing is volume. And then after volume, I think it's just sort of seeing what the trends are in your niche, like seeing what's working well for other people and just saying what's my twist on it. So if you want to do, let's say if you want to do fishing videos, because that's just front of mind for me. If I was starting a fishing video channel tomorrow, first thing I would do is I would post 50 videos to get good. Because I'm already good at making videos, I wouldn't need to do that. So I could kind of be more tactful from the start. But I've posted probably 2,000 videos in my lifetime, and that's why I've got to the level I'm at. So the first thing I'd do is I'd look around and I'd say, okay, what's working within my niche? What's working in other niches? Can I adapt that to my niche? So maybe it's like surviving using only this fishing rod, or maybe it's the world's cheapest fishing rod versus world's most expensive fishing rod.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's I caught X amount of fish in 24 hours, or catching every species of fish in one lake in 24 hours. Like I would look and say, these are trends that are working across YouTube. Can I adapt that to my niche? And everyone is like, oh yeah, that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work in my niche. It doesn't work in this niche or whatever. But so often, it's not always about the editing. It's not always about the pace. It's about the ideas. And generally on YouTube, people like these concepts, these challenges, these high stakes, 24 hours surviving, cheapest, biggest, world's most expensive, world's cheapest, world's best. They like those kind of big, punchy ideas. So I would just take my niche and say, how can I adapt that to my niche?
Yeah.
World's most expensive watch versus world's cheapest watch. Like wearing a watch, like living using only an Apple Watch for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Or for a week. Like there's so many ways you can adapt that kind of big challenge meta into your niche. So that's what I do. And I just make a lot of videos like that. See if I can trend jack. See if I can mix other YouTubers into my topics. Like maybe it's responding to someone's watch collection, if it's a watch channel. Or maybe it's like finding a way to collab with another YouTuber. Maybe it's like building another YouTuber the biggest fishing rod in the world. Or, this is if you're in a fishing niche. Like you can just find things that work and just adapt that to the niche you have. But really, the thing I keep coming back to, there's a million little tips, but the thing I keep coming back to is having that volume first. Just being willing to take 3 or 4 years to make this work. And even at that, you have to have the mindset at the start that you're not guaranteed anything. You can do 50 videos. You can work really hard. You can take all the tips, and it still doesn't necessarily work every time. It might not be your first channel that works. I see YouTube very much like starting a business. If you look at startup success rates, like 90% fail. But does that mean you shouldn't start a startup? No, because you learn, you meet great people, you get experience, it looks good on your CV, and there's a really good chance, there's a very possible chance you could hit it big and create something incredible that changes people's lives. So that's kind of how I think about YouTube too. It's like, it's difficult, there's lots of competition, the odds are sometimes completely stacked against you. But the pros aren't just making it on YouTube. Like if someone is listening to this podcast and they say, I want to do YouTube. So they start a channel, let's just say it's a fishing channel. They make 100 videos. They really work. They learn everything they can about YouTube. And after 100 videos, they're at a point where maybe they have like a few thousand subscribers, but it's not enough to make a living. And they're like, this isn't working. I would hire them. Someone else would hire them tomorrow. They've just basically took 3 years to get an education how YouTube works. YouTube is one of the biggest platform. It's the biggest media platform in the world, basically. There's people hiring every single day. There's people on Twitter just begging for talented enough people to hire. So I think of it as like, even if the YouTube doesn't work out, you've basically just given yourself an education in an incredibly huge career that could be very lucrative for you too.
Yeah.
So that's how I think about it. It's like, yeah, it's one of those things.
Do people actually, do like employers actually look at like, if you've done YouTube for like 5 years and like, you know, you haven't really got to a point where you can make it a job, would an employer look at that and be like, okay, he kind of has the attributes or like the skills to work with us, but he doesn't have like he hasn't gone to college and got a degree or whatever?
It's if you're hiring for a YouTube person, like if you're hiring for someone that understands video, all I'm saying is I hire people. I'm an Irish business. I would much rather hire that person than someone who's got a college degree. 100%, because I don't think there's anything wrong with getting college degrees. I don't think there's anything wrong with going to college. I went to college. I enjoyed it. I don't use it, but I enjoyed it. But if you want to get a job on YouTube, what better thing to do than do YouTube? And like a YouTuber is not going to look at it and say, hey, this guy's done YouTube for 4 years and he hasn't managed to grow a big channel. Let's not hire him. He's going to look at it and say, hey, this guy's done YouTube for 4 years. When I hire him, he's going to understand how analytics work. He's going to understand how to edit a video. Like he's going to understand a lot of the basics, so I don't have to train them. And all I'll say is the best YouTube teams I've worked on, a lot of them are built up of people who've already made videos. I was talking to the editor on one of my teams yesterday, and I was like, how long have you been making videos? And he said, been making videos for 8 years, been editing for other people for 4 years. So it started by him making videos himself, and now he's working with one of the biggest channels in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think and YouTube as a career and as an industry is massive. Like I mean, every single client I have right now, if there was a super talented person who was good at thumbnails or good at editing, we'd interview them and we'd probably hire them. You know, there's actually not enough really talented people there yet, and it's usually because they don't have the experience, or it's just a difficult skill to be really good at YouTube. But being really good at YouTube doesn't necessarily mean you have had to have a big channel.
Yeah,
it's more about, do you understand? Are you in the industry? So yeah.
My last kind of question, because people plague me with this, it's the most fucking irritating question I ever get asked. What are your thoughts on Irish content creation? Content creation in Ireland. What are your thoughts?
So like the
landscape
like of or like the scene.
The landscape, and well, this you look at the scene, it's like you've Jacksepticeye, blah blah, a couple of big ones, but then it's kind of like after that, there's not really a lot going on here in terms of creators. There's not a lot of big creators, or there wouldn't be a lot of brands that would like target Irish content creators, be like, okay, we're going to work with you, because there's not really much return there. That's kind of what the question is. I don't really even talk about it anymore, because I just get played with it all the time. But like if you look at there's a lot of content creators who'd be like me, 10, 15k subs, or like they'd be Twitch partner, like 100 viewers average, and that's kind of like the limit of where we kind of are at the moment. What would you say to people who are like in the scene, or what are your thoughts on content creation in Ireland?
I would say, first of all, anyone that's making content, full stop, so long as it's content that's not like illegal or anything.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of, like, you know, I just like the fact, especially if you're in Ireland, where, like we talked about earlier, I love Ireland. There's a lot of people that have been really supportive of what I've done and what other people have done here as well, but there's still a lot of boundaries, still a lot of like sort of snobbery, especially from media as well. Like I have this mate who runs an Irish channel called Real Engineering, and I believe his subscriber count is about 3.5, 4 million subscribers. So he's got this insane, huge channel where he's breaking down like really detailed and intense engineering topics, like how certain planes work, or how this rocket ship that NASA built works. All this incredible detailed analysis on engineering. And I've seen two circumstances where media in this country have interviewed him, or like brought him in for a radio interview, or had him featured in an article. And like every time I see that, it's like they're making fun of him almost. It's like they're kind of like I remember he had this this article in The Independent, which is about YouTube. And this guy is, again, I think I really respect what he's done. He's been a big inspiration for me, how he's built this incredible channel in Ireland. But he gets this interview from The Independent, and like in the interview, they just find like a picture of him from like years ago, where he's just like looking like an idiot with his tongue out or something, you know? And they use that as the picture. And I'm like, this guy's a business G. Like, he's running his business. He's got this insane channel. He's got employees, and you just pick a silly article, a silly photo of him 5 or 6 years ago to put as the picture in the interview. And in the interview itself, or in the description of it, you're like talking about how YouTube is like got COVID misinformation, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what does that to do with him?
Such propaganda.
Like this guy's doing something insane, and it's just almost getting ignored. So there's lots of boundaries in this country. There's lots of things going against you in this country, but I would say generally, it's worth giving it a go, even if that audience isn't huge. But the thing I would say, and I learned this a long time ago from an actual entrepreneur, it's like if you're trying to build a successful business in Ireland, you should be looking at America. You should be looking at the UK. You should be looking at bigger markets. So in Ireland itself, I do think there are some people who've had some relative success with an Irish audience, but it's just smaller. And I also find that a lot of Irish people just don't seem to be as into YouTube as, like, let's say Americans or the UK are.
Yeah.
I've just noticed that across the board. So I think if you really want to make it big as a creator in Ireland, you do need to be thinking about that American audience. Like, about 0.2% of my views come from Ireland.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably somewhat similar for Real Engineering. Maybe it's more, but it's probably somewhat similar. Jacksepticeye. Like, what percentage of his viewers do you think are from Ireland? 2%, 1%?
10, I'd say max. 10% max.
I would be very surprised if it was 10%, because the viewership he gets, it's coming from UK and America. So I would say for people, if they're trying to make that happen, you do need to kind of try to open it up to that broader audience. It is difficult. Like, it's like, how'd you do that? But maybe some people are kind of keeping themselves small by focusing so much on the Irish scene and trying to appeal to an Irish audience when that audience isn't necessarily there. But another thing I would say is, if you look at the Irish scene now and compare it to 10 years ago, it's bigger.
Mm.
So where would it be in another 10 years? It might be bigger again. Maybe it'll become more possible to make a career with just an Irish audience.
Mm.
But then you have to contend with the fact that Irish people, whenever they get an audience, there seems to be some sort of like Irish bug where they turn into an arsehole.
They get an audience
every time.
Yeah, they get an audience, do a couple of radio interviews, fuck off to LA and just start running a little, house. Yeah, no, like, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, it's, you don't want to limit yourself to. That was my biggest problem for, like, I'd say 6 months, 8 months. I was limiting myself to, like, Irish content, putting Irish in the title, Irish in the thumbnail, blah blah. And it worked for a certain extent. Like, I'm after building up a little bit of an audience with it, but it's like, at that point you have to start working towards, okay, don't limit yourself with just Ireland, because it's just never going to work. That's the biggest thing. Don't put a roof on yourself. And I think limiting yourself to a demographic or a nationality more so is it's not the way to go, especially YouTube. Like, I agree. And I think it's one of those things where I do think, if I look at people who've done a good job with this, so I've got a friend, Dara, if you know him. He's class.
And I mean, I've known Dara for years. Like, I remember I first met Dara in DCU, or maybe it was in London. I can't remember, like in 2016 or something. And he was doing YouTube. He had like 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers. I had like probably like 30, 40,000, and then like 100,000 on another channel. And we were just chatting about YouTube, and he was just so obsessed with YouTube. And he was so obsessed with, like, he wasn't just obsessed with being in the Irish scene or being an Irish content creator. He was obsessed with making videos that people enjoy regardless of where they're from. And if you look at his trajectory, it took him absolutely ages to get his lucky break. And I wouldn't even call it lucky break, because he grinded for that. But if you then look at the last kind of 6 months for him, I remember I did a consulting call with him 6 months ago. We were talking about this exact same thing, and I remember he put out a Twitter thread where he said that the advice I gave him was just trying to get 10,000 of the right people on his channel, because he was already making good videos. He just needed to keep grinding to try get 10,000 of the right people. Went over, did those collabs with Eric and Fidias, got lots of the right audience, which coincidentally was the American audience, and now he's like the kind of crazy Irish guy that has an American audience.
Yeah.
If you go into Dara's analytics, maybe if Dara watches this himself, he can leave it in the comments. But I would say his percentage of his audience from Irish viewers in the last 28 days, probably like 5%, if even. So it is about going after that broader audience, and also taking time, because Dara, like, I guarantee Dara has been doing this for longer than 99% of the people in the Irish scene. He's been doing YouTube for like 10 years.
I guarantee everyone watching this video have actually seen a Dara tag thumbnail on their, like, homepage at some point. Was it Chernobyl? Was that where he went, or something like that?
One story about that is, on the call we did together, I completely roasted that video, because I just thought the actual video itself was not. I just didn't think it was that good, and I still don't think it's that good. But then when he blew up with the, because that video did really badly to start with.
Yeah.
Or it just didn't do great. I think it hit like 8K. But then when he blew up with the Phidias and Herak videos, that video started to get 10,000 of the right people. And suddenly, like the American audience just loved it, and they just watched it, and it just blew up from there. And now it has like 4 or 5 million views. I think the thumbnail is good, but I still think the video itself is kind of. I just think it's kind of average. Like nothing really that interesting happens. But it just goes to show, like if you put yourself out there enough times, you try enough different things, it can happen.
Do you think there's ever going to be someone from Ireland that can do MrBeast style content? Like someone in Ireland, like doing the same stuff that he's doing over in America, but in Ireland, towards an American audience? Or do you think if someone wants to do this sort of content, he has to just go over to America and kind of like get into the culture more so, and just go over and just leave Ireland and do it somewhere else?
I think you can do it in Ireland. Like, think about some of Jimmy's ideas. You can do those in Ireland. You just need a lot of money.
Yeah.
It can work in Ireland, but the thing is, by having it in Ireland, are you gonna then like kind of make it Irish focused? Like, is it like, giving away this in Limerick or Cork, or and then instantly like an American audience is like, well, what's Limerick? I've never heard of this.
What's a Cork?
What the hell is that? What's a Cork? So it's like, I think it's possible to make the videos here, but if you package them or tailor them for a bigger audience, and it's not just America. There's also India, the UK too. But it's kind of thinking about a universal audience as opposed to just an Irish audience. I think it's possible. It probably just is going to take a bit of time. And yeah, there are a lot of Irish creators though. Like there's a guy called Call Me Kevin, who's got like 2 or 3 million, who I've chatted with a few times. I did a call with him maybe last year sometime. I think he lives in Spain, but he's got 2 or 3 million subscribers. I think he's originally from Cork. I've chatted to a guy in Limerick actually. His name escapes me. I feel bad, but I've actually forgot his name. I have him on Discord. His name is probably here in front of me on Discord somewhere. But he's from Limerick, and he's a Minecraft channel with well over 1 million subscribers. There are Irish people who've made it big, but every time it's like the same thing. It's like it's not an Irish audience.
Yeah,
it's going beyond that.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I think because there will be a lot of people, especially my own audience, who'll watch this and be like, "Oh, I do Irish content. I market myself towards Irish." It's not gonna work. Like I genuinely have full belief it will not work, and it's my biggest thing that I'm trying to get out of at the moment is try and branch over to America, or whatever. Because I'm just not. It's just there's such a limit. It's mental, like, and it's so demotivating when you see that limit. Like I'll do a video that I think will be like classed like 2K views. But that's like the limit for Ireland. That's like for the niche that I was doing. That's like kind of where it stops at. I think where you see on Twitch though as well, you see a lot of like Irish creators on Twitch, and they just market themselves like, I'm the Irish guy, like, and it's just I just don't see like longevity in that. I guess that's kind of all I'd say.
Yeah. The interesting thing though, the other thing I would say is Irish kids are watching YouTube. 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-olds, they are watching YouTube. I think they watch less potentially than other countries, like we talked about earlier, but they are still watching YouTube. Like MrBeast still gets a lot of views from Ireland. Like I could open up some studios in front of me on, different channels, and I could probably go through and look here. Like I'll just get a big channel up here. Let me just look at one of these channels. I won't name the creator just so that we're not doxing their viewership. Let me just look at this. So I'm looking at a channel here with 3 million subscribers. In the last 28 days, they've done 30 million views. And if I go to audience, geographies, let me just look at this. So in the last 28 days, what percentage, what does that work out as? It looks like they're kind of getting about, out of that 30 million views, they're getting about 150K views a month from Irish viewers. So that's still an audience. It's not necessarily 150. It's not necessarily 150K people, because it's probably maybe 20 or 30K people watching time and time again.
Yeah.
But there's still an audience there. There still is an audience. I just think the audience is not really clicking on stuff that's just like Irish for the sake of being Irish. Irish for the Irish scene, or doing stuff that's really focused on Ireland.
I think if you see like something like MrBeast, right, but it's like in we'll say down in Dingle, the people who watch it from Ireland will be like, oh, that's Dingle, and they'll be like, oh, class. But then it's like it doesn't really matter, like, because the Americans are like, oh, it's just a beach somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that's the way to go.
You can kind of get the best of both worlds there. And I guess I put it this way: like if MrBeast was Irish, which I wish he was, let's just say he was Irish, and he just followed the exact same steps he's followed, he'd still be the biggest creator in the world.
Yeah.
I don't think the fact he's Irish wouldn't have any impact. In fact, I think the fact I'm Irish has helped me at times, because I actually saw in the tweet you had, someone said
the accent,
ask Paddy if his accent helps with retention, and I can confirm it does.
Does it actually?
I think it does. Like I think the American audience, well, maybe, I don't know. I find that the American audience comment a lot on my videos and say, I love your accent. Your accent is so easy to follow. It's so smooth and all this sort of stuff. And I will say, I used to have a much stronger accent when I was growing up. Carlo, it was just a lot stronger.
Yeah.
It was like, "My lad, how's it going? And Carlo, I here." And it was just maybe a bit too intense. But now I find I've kind of toned it down a bit for the broader audience. And I get that comment a lot, like people saying that I just love your accent. I love watching the videos because of your accent. So I think it does.
All my recent comments on like last like maybe 4 or 5 videos is because I've noticed, it's not even a flex, like it's like 2 or 3K views. It's not big, but it's like I've started seeing the spike. Like it's getting recommended more, and I'm getting like way more like American people on the videos, and all the commenters like, can you put subtitles, or I don't understand, is this English? And I'm just like, oh, okay. So I think personally, from I don't know, my accent specifically, I might just talk really fast or whatever. I definitely think subtitles might benefit my channel more. But I think you talk slower. You talk like you have the Irish accent, but you talk a lot slower than what I would. I feel like.
Yeah, and as I said, I have worked on it a lot. Like, if I talked like I talk to my friends from around where I live, if I talk like that in the videos, I don't think it would work.
Yeah.
So it's it's one of those things where, yeah, I think you kind of have to adapt a little bit, but some people would see that and say you're kind of selling out or you're changing yourself for the videos. But I just see it as a way of like, I've got good information I want to share, and if I shared that with a thick Carlo accent, I would dramatically decrease the viewership.
Yeah.
So I've toned it down. Like it's I'm like almost a different person depending on who I'm talking to, which is weird. But yeah, when I'm talking to like maybe, yeah, someone from America who just has no idea how to understand an Irish accent, I just notice myself like speaking slow and pronouncing words really clearly.
Yeah.
Like making sure, because a lot of Irish accents are very kind of like, they're very one dimensional and they flow. So it's like, well, boy, how's it going? Yeah, I was talking to this lad and he was going on, and it's just like they all like flow and blend together. And what I've worked on is just pronouncing the syllables. So like butter,
Yeah,
instead
butter.
more, that sort of stuff. Like I've worked on making sure that I really pronounce the syllables. And I mean, even as I'm talking to you, I probably have a bit stronger of an accent than I might do in my videos. But if I went into, let's say if we were going for a pint together in Limerick and I was in the pub with you,
You get stabbed. That was a joke.
maybe, yeah, I wouldn't be talking like this. I think I would have like a smoother, like there'd be less kind of pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's just because I know there might be some Americans watching. So
And the drink wouldn't help either, slurring all over the place.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think we've covered everything there. Like, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Yeah, obviously, Paddy Galloway. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. I'm sure my audience will help his portfolio out very much. So yeah, go check him out. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. And yeah, we'll talk to you in the next one. Cheers for watching.